Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. Today we have for you a guest from regional New South Wales. I've met him a couple of times when I've travelled up there to the beautiful south coast of New South Wales. He runs Kemps MMA in Nowra, and he's a black belt. He's quite heavily involved in mental health promotion and mental health advocacy. So we're looking forward to chatting and getting to know him a little bit better. Thanks very much for joining us, Richard Kemp.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on board.
I'm glad that you kind of described where Nowra was, because that was my first question, Richard. Like, where is Nowra, mate, for people who don't kind of know the area?
All right. So just above us is Wollongong, and and just above that is Sydney. So to put it in perspective, I reckon the reason why they called it Nowra is because it's about an hour away from Wollongong, and Wollongong's about away from Sydney. So I've got 2 Nowra from Sydney at the moment.
That's perfect, eh? See, these people, I kind of sit there and go, I describe the Sydney roads like somebody cooked spaghetti, named all the pieces, and then just dropped it and went, that looks great. We'll just call this a city, right? But somebody's obviously figured that out for Nowra. That's clever.
Yeah. There's only one road. You just drive straight up that way or straight back down that way. So there's only one way in or out.
So it's a relatively smallish town, but you've got a pretty decent sized academy there, Richard. Yeah, how many students have you got?
I didn't really check like heavily on like the exact numbers because we have a lot of families training there and that sort of thing. But if I put it in numbers, maybe I reckon we'll get about 250 to 260 students that train.
Mm.
And
That's pretty good for a relatively small town. That's
I mean, Nowra's gotten pretty big now. I mean, and we've got all the outlying areas as well. So like Kalala, Huskisson, Sussex Inlet, we get a lot of people come in from down that way as well. So I guess the Shoalhaven now is, I'm not sure it's in it, maybe around 50,000 people.
A lot of people move there after COVID, or?
Yeah, it's ever expanding. Like we just moved house again, into the South Nowra area. So to put it in perspective, I guess when I left here back in early 2000, where I'm sitting now was just all bushland. Like there was no houses out this way. I think it had like 2 streets that were an industrial area. And now it's like this massive area. Just here in South Nowra alone now, there's like 3 brand new estates popped up in the last 4 years. And it's
wow, that's impressive. So tell us a little bit about your gym, Richard. So how long's it been running and what sort of things do you do there?
I'm coming up to the end of our 9th year, so going into year number 10.
Yep.
And I started in the Highlands before that for a couple of years as well, teaching people up there. I was more teaching Muay Thai and mixed martial arts then because I was still just a white and blue belt when I was living up that way. I started teaching in the Highlands when I was a blue belt. And then when I moved down here, I moved back to my hometown. This is my hometown. So when I moved back down here, we just moved into like this little space where I first met Kim. It was like that really dodgy little factory, I guess. It was pretty small. It was really dirty. I hated being down there because we had like a brickworks 2 doors up from us, and every time the wind blew hard, it just blew all the dust and everything to the gym. It was gross. And then I got this really cool opportunity to move my gym in 2019. So we started it at 2016. 2019 to move into this really cool spot on the highway, which was awesome. Then that year, that was the year I got my black belt in 2019. And I'll tell you a really funny story. I think I cursed all of Australia for like 3 years. So
You're to blame.
I got my black belt in September 2019, and then the whole of the East Coast and all the way down to Victoria set on fire.
Yeah,
It just burned. You remember the fires? Like, it was pretty intense.
yeah.
And like, we were in a house just up over here. We've only just moved, like it's like a kilometre away, where the fire was like literally a kilometre that way, and we're like, we had to evacuate a few times, and the gym's like another kilometre away from that, like the new gym, and so I was freaking out a little bit. And then the next 2 years, everyone got, we had the whole COVID lockdown stuff and everything like that. And so my first 3 years of opening in this beautiful brand new space was just like struggle after struggle after struggle. But we got through it all, and yeah, we're still there now. So going
And
into
you
year,
weren't considerate enough to hand your black belt back so we could just carry on with normal life, mate.
no way, no way.
We can all suffer with you, eh?
Yeah, I think I cursed myself too, because 2020 started, like just after all the fires and everything like that. And I went, all right, this will be my last year of competing, because I've been competing for like 10 years. And I've had like 16 MMA fights and 5 Muay Thai fights as well. So under my belt, like before I opened my gym. And so it was like, the body's starting to break down a little bit. I'm getting towards the late 40s now. I better, you know, step it back a touch. So I went to my first competition of the year, which was the first one they do. And I was like, I'm going to become the Australian champion this year, not just at the Nationals, because I'd never competed at the Nationals before, but I wanted to, also be the number one in Australia with the points and all that. I was going to go to every event. I'd planned myself out for the year with my family, so we have a really big family. I was like, this is going to be the year I actually just go and do it and get it done. And so I went to my first comp. I got in 3 divisions. One of them didn't run. So I didn't want to accept the medal for that, because I'm not that type of dude. And then I won every match, got 3 gold medals, started off perfect. It was the very first event of the year for the AFBJJ, I guess. It was my coach's event too, Anthony Parosh, he's my coach. And then COVID hit. Like, so the very next event, everyone was like pulling out left, right, and center, because everyone was freaking out about this thing. And I'm like, oh, dude, do I go up? And even my family just turned around me and said, please don't go up there, because if this thing is like, and you get it, we don't know what's going to happen. And so I was like, yeah, all right, I'll pull out of the event. So
Wow.
so I cursed myself as well. So
you got your black belt from Anthony Price. We've had him on the podcast before as well. Tell us about that day, about getting your black belt.
It was really special for me, because I also train under another really good black belt, Croft. If you know him, he's an absolute beast on the mat. And he owns his own gym in Mittagong, in up near Barrel there. And when I got my purple belt, Anthony couldn't make it because we had floods that day. It was something about me getting my belt and everything getting destroyed. So,
Good thing there's no more belts for you to have, hey? Good for the rest of us in Australia.
Yeah.
Mate, this coral belt in 40 odd years, I don't know what's going to happen.
I know.
I might not be around by then.
So 2016, I got my purple belt. I was like a white belt from 2006 to like 2014 or something like that, because I was very off and on with my jiu-jitsu, doing MMA fights and Muay Thai and all that sort of stuff. And then, so I go to get my purple belt off of Anthony, and Anthony calls up and goes, Richard, I can't make it to your academy. Your entire area is completely flooded. I can't go any further. I have to turn around and go back to Sydney. It was like really bad in 2016. And so Tony drove down 2 mountains through a flood in his 4-wheel drive. Anthony had my purple belt to give to me, but Tony had a spare one that he wore at the Masters. He won a silver medal at the Masters in Worlds over in Las Vegas, right? And before he went on the mat, they made him buy a new belt because his purple belt looked too ratty. So he had to buy a belt. So he just chucked it under his bed, that sort of thing. He actually drove that down and gave me my purple belt. And so he's one of my coaches as well. And it was the best thing about that day was I got to have both of them there that day, and they both Shark Tanked me in front of all my students with my students.
Yeah.
And I got to give I think 4 of my really close mates their brown belts as well on the same day. And it was like a really special day for me. Like, you'll never forget it,
Yeah.
especially the double knee ride from Tony and Anthony, who are both well over 100 kilos. That's right, Tony. You haven't lost any more weight, bro. You listen to this, next roll, I'm probably going to die.
So you've obviously been training in martial arts for a long, long time. So a good friend of mine who lives over in America, he has had a journey from when he was very young and grew up fighting and all these sorts of things. And when I talk to him, he talks about for him when there are too many rules, he finds that that's a lot of pressure. When there are very few rules, he's like, this is much better. So MMA for him, where there's not so many rules, he's like, this is good. And then jiu-jitsu is like, too many rules. So where are you with that sort of stuff, Richard? Having done all of them, where are you at?
I am more terrified. I'm not even joking. I was more terrified getting ready for a big jiu-jitsu competition than I am at jumping into a cage and punching on with another human. In the cage, for me, it's the only paid place, I guess, where other than being on stage when I was a musician and playing shows still, it's the only place I have felt complete freedom and expressive of my freedom, if you get what I mean. Like when you're in that spotlight, even though people are looking at you, I don't even think about that. It just gave me the opportunity to be me, just even for that 15 minutes of absolute torture on your own body and your brain. Most people freak out about it. I reveled in it. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Like, I was at one stage, I had 11 fights in 2012 or something like that. It was like a stupid amount of fights. But yeah, I was just taking fights on like 2 days' notice against guys 2 weight classes up because I needed that outlet at the time. So yeah, I find the cage much more inviting than the jiu-jitsu mats because I know then, you know what it's like. You think, you know what, I'm pretty skilled and I know what I'm doing, but I'm not allowed to punch this person in the face when I'm sitting in their half guard. So now I have to technically pass their half guard, get past that, and then I've got to solidify the position. I can't hit them to keep them down. You know, I can't do certain things that I would normally use to keep someone pinned onto the floor. And so now I'm like, in my head, I'm like, all right, your elbow's got to be here, yeah. You know, because sometimes you can be a little bit sloppier with your MMA grappling and stuff like that. Yeah, reach up for that underhook and you can feed them a couple of shots, you know, and that sort of thing. But yeah, but doing jiu-jitsu, you've got to be so technically proficient, especially when you hit that purple, brown, and black stage of your competition. I think there is where you really find out how good you are. And mentally, I think it's the toughest thing I've ever done.
So, if
Wow.
you don't mind me asking, Richard, you're a little bit older and you were doing MMA, like, did you say into your 40s? Like, you were...
Yeah, I had my last MMA fight at 40 years old in 2016, the year I
Yeah,
opened up my gym.
like, how was that on the body, if you don't mind me asking? Because I get the feeling MMA is more of a young person's activity.
I guess it is, but like my coach explained it to me, like when I was talking to Anthony about it, I never actually got to fight under Anthony except for that last fight. And like he said to me, like with his UFC career and that as well, it's not the fuel in the tank. The fuel is, you can always refuel. It's the tread on the tires. And, you know, it's going to be a bit harder to change those tires over and feel new again and that sort of thing. So because I started fighting late, those first few years, and I've always been like a pretty active dude, except for between the age of 24 and say 30, 31. I had a knee reconstruction, and I sat around playing war games because I worked for Games Workshop and did nothing but drink beer and smoke cigarettes for like 6 years straight. And I turned into this like massive fat dude. And yeah, for my height, I was like 108 kilos with this gigantic beer belly, and I think I needed a D cup bra or something like that at the time. Um, but
You were
anyway,
someone's dream. You were someone's dream.
yeah, it was someone, definitely my nightmare, but someone's dream. Um, and so yeah, when I got around to finally like getting my finger out, and because I do kickboxing off and on for years, I was terrible. Like I was just off in and out. 2006, I found jiu-jitsu, and then I started to be more, I guess, more consistent. I loved it when I found MMA, and I went, "What's this jiu-jitsu thing?" I went and tried it. I got smashed. I was like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever," you know. And then yeah, after that, like the body sort of, I guess, it hadn't been broken so much, like from the years of playing rugby when I was younger, and so the tread on my tires was okay for
Yeah.
those first years, and
Yeah.
then once I was over, though, it gets harder to recover.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
tell us about those early years, Richard. Did you my first so two parts. The first question is, at what age did you sit there and go, yeah, I want to have MMA fights? And then number two, what was your childhood like? Like, were there street fights where you're like, hey, I need to learn to look after myself? Or was, foray into martial arts and kickboxing, was that just something that you wanted to do for fun?
I'll start with when I was a kid. So I used to get bullied a lot as a child, like growing up. We're in the 80s, that sort of thing. I lived in a
Yeah.
pretty rough area. Like I grew up in my hometown here in Nowra. And so East Nowra is always renowned for being a very rough area. That's where I grew up with my mom and my grandparents. Like she had the three of us by herself, and we would live with our grandparents when when we were first growing up. And yeah, so I'd get bullied a fair bit and that sort of thing. So my grandfather taught me how to throw hands and how to look
Yeah.
after myself. And then as I got older, I became a musician. I did a lot of music, that sort of thing. And to relax when I get home from work, me and my best mate at the time, we're living together, would sit down and watch all the Fox Sports fights. Do you remember, like, way back in the early days, like we're talking 1993, 92, 93, 94. And it was Mark Castanini and Mike Chiavello were always commentating all the fights around Australia, all the Muay Thai fights and kickboxing fights. And we were fixated on. We absolutely loved it. That's how I started, like doing kickboxing and more boxing and that sort of thing. And then, yeah, as I got older, I went back to playing rugby, and I was a musician as well. Had my knee reconstruction. Did work for Games Workshop. While I was working for them, I was about to have my first kid at 30, 31, maybe 32, around that age sort of thing. And I looked at myself and I went, dude, how are you going to run around with a child? Like, look at you. Like, you drink all the time, you smoke cigarettes, you just play war games, you're fat and obese, and you need to get moving. So, and that's when I found jiu-jitsu instead of just going to kickboxing all the time. I saw the UFC for the first time in 2006, I think it was. And I went, man, this is unreal. This is like the best thing I've seen in forever. And like I said, I got smashed during that. And it was right then and there. I was like, I want to fight. I actually want to have at least one fight. And I ended up having another 3 kids over the next 3 years. So being consistent was out the window, as we all know. And I ended up having my first fight the year my last son was born. So, I worked myself up to that. And was that 2011? I finally got to fight in 2011. And yeah, and the rest is history. So
Wow. So you're like 34, 35 at that stage.
I, was 36. I
Wow.
turned 50 next. Yeah.
Impressive. Impressive.
Yeah. Wow. So you
Crazy,
were
but impressive.
around in
Yeah.
a bit more like the
Tough.
early days of MMA then in Australia. Would they be considered like the early days or not really?
Back in 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah. For Australian MMA, that's when it was starting to like sort of become more popular, and it was starting to flourish. There was CFC before that, and I used to watch all those fights. I'd go and watch them live in Sydney because I actually wanted to fight on that show. You dream pretty big back then. I got to watch Robert Whittaker's first two fights live. And I turn around to my mate. I'm not even joking. This is you'll go, what the hell? I turned around to him and I said, "Man, I reckon that kid in there, I think he was only 18 at the time." I said, "Man, I reckon that kid could become world champion." And he's going, "No way, he'll never." Look at Anderson Silva. That dude's just demolishing everyone. He'll never get to that sort of thing. I said, "Nah, man, there's something about that dude. He's going to be a beast." Hey, lo and behold, a few years later, I sent my mate Rory a text. He's a really good purple belt. I went, "See, I was right."
Yeah.
When he won the UFC title. So yeah, so looking back at all those early days and that sort of thing, yeah, it was sort of, and it was very Wild West too. So some states would have like heavy regulations and others wouldn't. So because I was in Canberra at the time, you go and have a fight. I also had to do a show up with a doctor's certificate. Didn't even have bloods.
Mm.
And what were the
Yeah.
rules in and around then? Like, obviously it's a lot more moderated now, but what were the rules when you first started fighting? Are they much different now, or is it similar?
They're exactly the same.
Yeah.
They're all exactly the same. I think when they first streamlined those rules, they kept them in place. That's the one thing I've loved about MMA is they haven't changed the rules too much and that sort of thing. And I hope they don't do that to jiu-jitsu as well. I like how they actually
Yeah.
expanded the rules, except they didn't give us masters heel hooks, which I was seriously disappointed in.
God, I'm happy with that.
I'm not disappointed. No, thank you.
I was cranky. I'm like, what? Old man like me can't do a heel hook.
I think they're worried about our joints, Richard. Our joints are too old to deal with
I
that
don't
amount of.
waste. They're already broken.
Yeah, I hear. You were talking with us before we press record that you've been doing some speaking about resilience and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? You mentioned earlier that you were a white belt for a pretty long time. So is it sort of stemming from that? You've pretty much been resilient since day one, or just tell us a little bit more about that.
I think I'm a fairly resilient person. Like I've had to be. I don't think I've actually had a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wasn't, then things would be very, very different for me now. Like complete polar opposite, I think. And so it was good to get out, and I got to speak for a local business here and talk to all their staff about resilience and how they can build their own businesses and that sort of thing. Like, because I've been open now for almost 10 years, and once a business gets to that point, it's pretty, and you've just got to look after it like your child, I guess, in a way. And the main thing I was trying to speak to them about was like using the building blocks, like because I said this exact same thing to my my junior students and all the way through to my adults. One day I sat down, I had a chat with them all about resilience because you're going to get tears, you're going to get bruises, you're going to get hurt. It's martial arts. These things happen. And it's the same within life. You're going to get the little things that niggle at you, that hurt you, that you get bruised from, and that sort of thing. And I talked about those negative things, like they're all negatives. And I posted it up one day on socials, like the negative talk, and that's how I got the talk with this company, because they saw what I had to say and they wanted me to come in and talk about it. And I was just saying how all those bumps, those bruises, those little niggling things, they're all little things. They're not big things, they're little, and they don't matter whatsoever. If you can learn to realize that they don't matter and doesn't hurt as much as you think it does, that you can brush that off and you can get over that hurdle, then when the big things happen, you're gonna be able to deal with that in a better and more positive light, rather than, and because if you can't get over the little bumps and bruises, when the big accident happens, you won't get over it. You won't be able to deal with it, and and that sort of thing. And then when I spoke to the people at with the company, I turned around and I said, but then there's also the positive things, and there's all the little things that we get along the way. Like the little victories. We talk about, something went well today for the whole day. Like the little things all added up, and they do matter. They're probably the most important things, because you can have something like, say, winning the lottery, right? Like this massive, oh wow, that's a massive positive. I've got a crap
Yeah.
tin of, yeah. But if you haven't used all the little positives in your life to build up a foundation of how to deal with that big positive that comes along, that can come crashing down really hard on you, especially if you lose it all. Those sorts of things. And it's about understanding that the little things with positives are the most important thing. They're your little building blocks. They're the foundation of your house. And so if you can use those to build yourself up, when the big things do happen to you and the good things do happen to you, like having a good, successful business and all that, you've used all the little things along the way to build it. And if you don't reflect on those and write those things down and enjoy those things at the time, then it's going to be very hard to enjoy the big thing at the end of the line.
There's a lot of sayings, right, which do make sense. And when you're sort of talking, one of the ones that comes to mind is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's part of resilience. But if the first thing that you ever encompass or came across was that big thing that could kill you, you probably won't get through it. But it's because you've had all of these little bumps throughout your life, and when things happen to you as a kid, and then you can get through that, and then you're constantly building on these um, letdowns, or as you're saying the other way, you're building on successes. So when the big thing actually occurs, you've had prior training and know how to deal with that, whether it's resiliency through that negative connotation or resiliency through the positive connotation, and as you
Yeah.
say, if somebody won the lottery and they'd never got anything in their life, I mean, how many stories do you hear about people who have won astronomical amounts of money and then it's gone in 2 years or 3 years, and they're worse off than what they were when they got the money, and they sit there and they're like, I wish I'd never got that money.
Yeah.
It's super interesting that you say that, Richard.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's very important that we use all the little milestones in our lives, all the little things, to either build resilience and discard, or B, use and grow from.
So where did you learn this? So was this a childhood thing for you? Is this growing up in Nara? Is this playing rugby and then getting lessons through that? Like, where does this resilience come from for you?
To be honest, I really do, I think it's more life lessons. Like I've had a lot of things in my life that have been quite difficult. Um, I won't talk about that on here. Like there's
Yeah,
some
cool.
personal stuff.
Yep,
Um, like just with my kids and that sort of thing. And
yep,
you know my whole philosophy about building that resilience up, and that came through at one stage having to be a single dad of 4 kids under 4 years old, and I had to leave my favorite job in the whole world, and then the only thing I was left with, I knew how to fight, so I became a professional fighter.
yeah.
And that's a lot of how that came about.
That's a bloody tough lesson, mate.
Oh, absolutely, it is. Yeah, I was very, very lucky that I have a fantastic parents with my mum and my stepdad that they really helped me out during those times. That was super tough, but I'm very, very lucky that I had that support network around me, which
Mm.
I think another important part of building resilience is making sure you have the right support network around you. Because there are people out there that would rather bring you down than build you up.
Yeah.
and you've got to have the right support as well. I think being a parent in the right way is learning how to, I guess, lead the way for your children to go. Do I quit here or do I keep going?
And this leads in nicely too, Richard, to what we were also talking about just before we press record with regard to Movember. And
Yeah.
Your club's quite involved with that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm going to give a huge shout to Mick Mason on Instagram. He is Meat Puppet Mick. That's right. He got turned into a meat puppet very early on in the gym.
Awesome.
He's actually one of my best mates these days. He's done so much stuff for the gym. He he came up with this idea to do Movember for the gym back when we were at the old joint. And we just jumped on board straight away. I went, this is the best thing ever, because he goes, man, you do so much stuff for mental health here. You don't even realize what you're doing, do you? And that's what started making me think about what I'm actually doing rather than just doing. And so we come up with this concept, and we did the Movember Cup was the first year when we moved into the new gym. Did this thing called the Movember Cup, and where anyone can turn up, pay $20, and it's a knockout competition, right? And the way we run it is just it's pretty insane. You'll have a laugh. We've added some like Games Workshop in there as well. Everyone has to roll off dice to see who they're fighting. No one knows who they're coming up against before you walk in there. You've got to roll it off, and then you get 3 minutes to sub your opponent. If you don't, you both stay in and roll off again, and you just keep going around the gym until there's only 2 people left, and then it's no time limit, sub only.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like this thing can go for a couple of hours. It's hilarious. Never does, because there's a lot of white belt energy in the room. It's mostly just white belts, while the rest of us black belts are sitting around placing bets when our white belts fight.
And then all the money from that goes to Movember, yeah?
Yeah, and we all do socials and that as well, asking for donations for it all. This year we've got rash him, and for every rash he sold, we give the entire lot of the profits of that to Movember as well. So I pay for it all up front to get them in and that sort of thing, and then we just use that to pay it all off and that sort of thing. So any profit from that goes straight to Movember. And we've got a pretty cool design this year. I'll post it up on socials later on.
Yeah.
What else do we do on that day? We have barbecue from the Bearded Fishermen's group in our local area who are coming in.
Richard likes the idea of that. I saw you
Bearded
smile.
fisherman,
You
yeah,
want to
for
join that
sure.
one, don't you?
I love it.
Help guys that have been through like really bad hardship and stuff like that, and make sure they've got food and looked after and that sort of thing. It's such a really cool thing that they do, and they're coming in to do a barbecue so they can raise money for what they do for guys. And we're like, yeah, you guys take all that money, you guys do the barbecue, take that, make sure you guys help keep doing what you're doing. Joe, who's also at our gym, he's like a broker for Aussie. And so he brings the Aussie van, does the coffees and that sort of thing for everyone, raises money for Movember as well. But he also, for families that ever want to do their refinancing and all that sort of thing, you know how stressful that can be.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. What he does, if they do it through him, he'll try and make it as less stressful as possible. That's what you want. But at the same time, every time they do, Aussie are going to donate $100 to Movember for every person that, gets refinanced. Just little things like that. And it's all local businesses.
Yeah.
Each other out, and we've got all these other really cool local businesses that have just donated prizes to give to us and that as well. Like, I wish I had my list of them here so I could run them all off. And we've had people who've been doing it for a few years running with us now too. So we do this big raffle at the end, and we just hand out all these prizes and have a whole heap of fun with it too.
Mate, what a beautiful community you're creating there, eh? That's and I think that can be the power of something like a jiu-jitsu gym, because you're getting, as everybody knows, like you're getting the doctor, you're getting the plumber, you're getting the sparky, you're getting the lawyer, you're getting the students, you're getting the like 51-year-old dog trainer, who should be at work. like you're getting such a broad range of people coming through in that one location who can all bring different skills and personalities, and then all of a sudden you're as one in this community, right? Like it's
Yeah.
amazing, mate. You've done so well with that.
That was my main thing with building a business. It wasn't about making money. And I'm still to this day to that very point. Money doesn't matter if you don't look after.
Hey, hang on, wait, I think I've lost your audio. Richard, can you hear it? Is it just me?
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry,
You're back,
yeah,
you're back.
someone tried to call me, so I just
Okay.
had to think. I thought I was on Do Not Disturb, but I think it was my partner. And which I don't have a Do Not Disturb because otherwise I'll. Um, I always make sure I've got my family can call me at any time. But yeah, what was I saying? Uh,
Just
The
the
community.
community side of it and what you've done and like, you didn't create the gym to build money, you created it for
yeah,
this community.
I look at it and I think to myself, I'll make a living of looking after my family and giving other people jobs as well. Like I've got people in my gym with full-time jobs now and that sort of thing. Um, you know, by looking after other people, they'll want to come and join the gym because we look after them. We're not. I don't care about the next world champion. I really don't. I really don't care about the guy who just wants to fight and that's all he wants to do, and and that sort of thing. I do care about them, but I don't care about that should be the only focus of the gym. I think
Yeah.
that can become a really negative thing, and what I want is I want everyone to be able to be looked after on an equal level. I don't care if you're a white belt that just walked in or been a black belt and been training with me for 20 years or whatever. I don't care if you're like a world champion Muay Thai fighter or someone come in, a dad who's just come in to do general fitness. You will all get my time equally. And that's the way I look at it.
Fantastic. So anybody that's traveling in the Nowra area, sounds like Kemps MMA is the place to go. So
We're on the highway, you can't miss
get
us. So
Like
get
everybody who's
yourself.
driving from Melbourne to Sydney, if you are going that way and taking the scenic route, you might they sit there and say like you need a break, yeah, as you're driving. So, just checking on those time slots at Kemps MMA and like just pop in, right?
mate,
Yeah,
we're 6 a.m., 10 a.m. jiu-jitsu classes, nighttime jiu-jitsu classes going in, or just send me a text message. I'll meet you down the gym for a roll. I don't care. I live
So
fantastic.
literally around the corner.
before we do wrap up, Richard, you've spoken a couple of times about being a musician and that sort of thing. So can you just what instruments do you play, or what was your sort of relationship with music? And then as you started to learn, whether you learned martial arts first or music first, did you find crossover points in the way that you actually learn? Like, did you pick up martial arts first or music first?
Music I picked up first,
Yep.
and they are very similar in their crossover paths. I think in the way that you learn. Um, I started with the bass, so I'm a bass guitarist first. Um,
Yep.
I played guitar in like a really a semi big like hardcore punk band back in the 90s. I used to do some big tours and played with some like massive bands from overseas, which was really cool. Um, and I play the drums as well. I can play the drums. I'm terrible on piano, but I can do synthesizers. But yeah, I think as I've gone along, I've just put more tools, I guess, in my belt. So it's I think becoming a producer was being a producer is more like being a black belt. You've got to have all those tools at your disposal and understand how everything works in the music world, I guess. Whereas being a musician and you're out there touring and that, unless you're like these super huge famous bands, which would be like the world champions of jiu-jitsu. Yeah, you think like they're the world champs. When you're playing your local circuit and all that sort of thing, and you're really trying to make it there and you're really trying to get to the top, you're like those blue and purple belts that just want to win everything. So I look at it very similar to that in a lot of ways.
Cool. Awesome. So, yeah, thank you so much, Richard, for giving up your time. It's been really good getting to know you a little bit better. And do you have any final words, any parting thoughts for our listeners?
My main thing is look after yourselves, like your mental health first. Number one, make sure you give yourself some time every now and again. But more importantly, look after those that look after you and give them as much love as they give you. Because if you give back, I think everything's about giving back. And as much as you give back, you're going to receive more as well. And that's how it grows. And I think that's how our community should grow together. I think that's how families should grow together. And and if anyone's ever down our way, jump on in and we'll help you out. We're always happy to roll.
Mate, what a perfect way to end this, I reckon, Richard. That was beautifully put. Thank you as always, Kim. That was really cool. That's it for another episode of Roll or Die. Do us a favor, subscribe on the platform that you listen to. So whether that's through iTunes or Spotify or wherever, and then download like another app and then like subscribe to that one too. So now we've got like double the subscribers. So we're trying to grow it. Hey, that's not cheating, okay? That's just fudging the numbers a little bit, but we're all right with that.
Yeah.
So do that. Subscribe on a couple of platforms. We also have our t-shirts, our Roll or Die t-shirts, in association with Mana Fight Apparel. They are good. They are good quality. We're still doing the pre-orders for those, but hopefully we'll be shipping these out relatively soon. So the faster everybody buys them, pretty much the faster everybody will get them. So if we could sell another, let's say, 10 of those, that would be fantastic. And also remember, it's almost November. It is November when you hear this. Christmas is just around the corner, so it's probably the perfect Christmas gift for your partner who trains or your partner who doesn't train or your coach.
Or for your coach. Maybe you want to get another stripe. So you want to...
Like Richard's students, he needs 4 t-shirts. That's the first 4 stripes that you'll be getting. So that's a good way to finish it. We'll do that. Subscribe on 3 different listening platforms. Thank you, Richard. Mate, you're a wealth of knowledge. You're a bloody fantastic person. And we can just talking to you, mate, we can hear the love that you've got for your students. And probably more importantly for your family and those that you truly love and care about, mate. So thanks for coming on the podcast. We appreciate it. Thanks again, Kim. Wonderful as always. And we'll see you on the next episode of Roll or Die. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Get behind Movember. We'll put the link on the show notes, Richard, for your cause and for Movember as well. So thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
I'm not shaving my beard.